A white dragon's lack of intelligence does not mean you should play them dumb. There, I said it. Today's deep dive into white dragon's personality profile, lair features, synergistic allies, and battle tactics for all sizes will help you to bring your white dragons to life as the brutal, primal predators that they actually are. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, my name is Timothy, though some people do call me Tim? I've been DMing for almost 30 years and currently run 7 weekly games of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Well, anyway, white dragons get a bad rap, one that they don't deserve. Basically, they're portrayed as big, dumb brutes. Idiots who'll just throw themselves on the first adventurer's sword that happens to wander nearby. But a well-played white dragon should strike a primal fear into your players the same way that a wolf's eyes shining in the darkness while you're camping, alone, naked, and coated in bacon grease does. What? I'm not judging your camping habits. Anyway, playing them well starts with understanding their personality. And more particularly, their drives. And more than most dragons, white dragons' personalities are derived from their environment. They typically live in the harshest of frozen tundras, places where the sun carries little weight, ice and cold are constant companions, and food is scarce. This often means that a white dragon will pigeonhole your party as either a rival predator invading their territory, or as prey waiting to be eaten. Add in a healthy dose of draconic pride and greed, and you've got a pretty good recipe for how this primal hunter should be run. First, they're all about survival. A white won't attack if it thinks it's going to be badly injured. Badly injured animals die, especially in the tundra. It won't stick around to fight to the death, and it isn't even above surrendering in order to save its life. Whatever it takes to survive. Chaotic and treacherous by nature, you can't trust their surrender to last if they ever feel like they have the upper hand, though. Regardless, despite how it seems to happen at a lot of tables, that means that white dragon fights should almost never end with the white dragon growling and snarling as it fights to its final breath. It will only do this if both escape and surrender are off the table. Second, they are predators and your characters are crunchy and taste good with or without ketchup. The Arctic terrain is less likely than most places to have defenseless creatures. There's not a lot of plants to eat, there's only each other. And so Arctic predators get really good at selecting their prey. While other dragons prioritize targets based on their abilities or the danger that they pose, white dragons pick their targets based on their isolation or how easy they seem to be to take down quickly. Ironically, this often leads them to pick the same targets that one of their smarter cousins would. Sorry wizards, your low strength and lack of armor makes you look pretty tasty in those robes. And besides, who wants to pick pieces of a knight's armor out of their teeth anyway? The exception, especially in younger dragons, is that whites might not have the experience to be able to know to pick on the healer if they don't look particularly vulnerable. They tend to prefer the wizard and the bard, the rogue and the warlock over the armored cleric. However, lone prey is very tempting, which could lead to opportunities for your party's tough guy to separate himself from the group and bait the dragon into attacking. Just don't expect the dragon to stick around once the trap has been sprung. We do need to talk about the elephant in the room, of course. White dragons' mental stats suck. Hopefully you're already convinced that their low intelligence, average wisdom, and alright charisma are not all that there is to tell about these Arctic predators. But if not, for adult and ancient white dragons, at least realize that these guys are as smart as most people that you know and have lived for hundreds or hundreds of years, giving them enough experience to potentially make up for their lack of intelligence. They're not tactical geniuses like some other dragons, but they're not idiots either. Unsurprisingly, white dragons lair in caves of stone or ice. They can do so at any age, but as usual, only the adult and ancient variants have a regional effect over the miles surrounding their chosen domicile. But we'll get to that later. Some typical features of a white dragon's lair include frozen trophies and treasures, frigid water, and all kinds of hazards of ice and snow. When it comes to treasure, white dragons love the glitter of ice. They're also territorial and greedy, which is why they combine these two things and freeze all of their loot in their lair. This serves as protection for their loot and trophies, and also allows them to marvel at their own past successes. Because of this, we should make sure to seed a dragon's treasure and trophies throughout the length of their lairs. They might still have a traditional treasure room like Old Smog, but it's going to be frozen under layers of ice. If they've dealt with adventurers before or have intelligent minions, they might also place suitable traps to protect their frozen treasures, like creating a decorative border around their frozen goods out of, say, highly flammable compressed whale blubber. I mean, come on, melting the wall to get at the loot and being burned to death in the middle of a white dragon's lair? Funny, right? Frigid water is a super dangerous threat in real life. Unfortunately, in D&D, it's one of the least impressive ones by the rules as they're written. You basically only have to worry about it if you're going to spend a number of minutes equal to your constitution score in the water. That means a minimum of 8 minutes at most tables, which is effectively an unlimited amount of time in any mapped location in a D&D game. At least if you're traveling straight from one location to another. Which is why white dragons, which can hold their breath for an above average amount of time, have a swim speed, and are immune to the effects of frigid water, might submerge particularly interesting rooms inside of their lair, like one of their treasure rooms. Add in their love of freezing their loot underneath the ice, and you might be able to get players trying to get that stuff out while having to spend 10 plus minutes cracking at the ice in frigid water conditions to where those rules actually have some teeth. Add in a hunter's cunning, and a white dragon might set up a false treasure room with these kinds of circumstances. Or they might wait just outside of such a situation to pounce on their weakened prey, or just collapse the tunnels that lead into a very wet place so that you have to dig yourself out while fully submerged. From its point of view, it can always tunnel back in after a couple of hours when you're nice and cold and crunchy. White dragons also know that they are the superior underwater combatant compared to most two-legged foes.
I'm stronger, I'm smarter, I'm better. I am better!
So they might have suitable pools of water here and there throughout their lair that they can retreat into, or get the advantage of having a swim speed versus an adventurer who doesn't. Make sure you brush up on the underwater combat rules before you run this. Meanwhile, every kind of ice or snow trap that you could imagine is suitable in a white dragon's lair, and ice is a very versatile medium for setting up traps. Whether it's a natural hazard, one that they made themselves, or something that was crafted by their terrified minions, it's all the same to the white dragon. Their lair is designed to help them survive, which means it's designed to punish intruders and allow their escape if necessary. Chutes of slippery ice, pits with sharp stalagmites, thin ice that breaks beneath your feet, icy windows that look into tanks of frigid water that could be smashed to let that flood in, mini avalanches that bury people alive in tons of snow, or cold adapted piercers hiding amongst the stalactites, ready to drop using their blind sight in a frigid, foggy room. The options are kind of endless. And some of these could be set up to be quite durable, waiting for the dragon themselves to trigger them with a smash of its tail, while others are there to either make noise and alert the dragon, or to just flat out punish the intruder. In addition to all of this, adult and ancient white dragons have two lair features. The first, called Frigid Cold, might seem kind of redundant. It makes an area within a mile of the dragon's lair automatically extreme cold as an environmental effect, and all water is frigid water. But they already live in the Arctic tundra, so this tends to already be the case. But the interesting point is that it means that adult and ancient white dragons create that situation in their surrounding territory. It could be a really cool idea to have a white dragon that has been displaced somehow, either because global warming has heated the surrounding area, or because they were forced out of their territory and they have this lone mile radius pocket of freezing cold where everywhere else is more temperate. The second regional effect is Glacial Gloom, as if freezing to death wasn't already gloomy enough. This chilly fog lightly obscures the area, and that chill gets into the bones of the dragon's enemies if they dare to long rest within a mile of its lair, giving them an hour-long speed debuff. The light obscurement affects both the dragon and its allies as well as the party, though not within a blind sight radius. But it does make finding icy traps and ambushes more difficult for the invading party. The long rest effect, where you get a -10 to your movement speed if you fail a DC 15 Constitution saving throw, kind of sucks. But assuming that a dragon who has lived this long would try and capitalize on people having old creaky bones in the morning, then it means that dawn attacks upon people who tried a long rest in a dragon's territory would be fairly common. A preferred tactic, if you will. This would probably be a hit and run attack intended to either pick somebody off or weaken the group, and it might inform the white dragon's choices regarding minions, trying to select creatures that either have an above average speed or maybe some kind of ranged attack. Now that we're talking preferred tactics, let's talk tactics in general. Like in my video on the black dragons, we'll start with the Wyrmling and young dragons and add in abilities as we gain them. Because of their lower CR, white dragons don't hit as hard as some of their chromatic cousins. That includes with their breath weapons. But there are some catches. Let's walk through their advantages and weaknesses from the top to the bottom. Their AC and their initiative are kind of low, though their above average constitution gives them slightly more hit points at most age categories. And in the places where it doesn't, it's because of the large challenge rating divide. They have unmatched versatility in movement speeds thanks to their burrow, fly, and swim speeds. All white dragons are experts in perception and trained in stealth, but given their low dexterity and wisdom scores, they don't really ever get amazing at this compared to any of the other dragons. Meanwhile, immunity to cold, I assume that that's a given, right? Wyrmling's blind sight starts at 10 feet and continues to rise as they gain age categories. This means that from a tactical standpoint, hunting in a blizzard is a prime spot for a white dragon to go after you, ignoring the cold and able to find their prey unerringly, at least once they get close to you. And it could work in a cloudy pool of water also, where their swim speed already gives them an advantage. And if their movement speeds from earlier wasn't enough, their ice walk ability allows them to climb on frozen surfaces without having to take any kind of athletics check. This effectively means that they have a climbing speed equal to half their movement speed, at least when dealing with ice. And they don't suffer any chance of falling prone slipping on a field of ice, which should feature in plenty of their battlefields. And that brings us to their attacks. Frankly, they've got pretty mediocre attack and damage numbers on their rend. But if their prey is prone from an icy surface, that advantage goes a long way to helping their accuracy. Meanwhile, a Wyrmling's breath weapon is a mere 15-foot cone, but it does do significant damage. I might use their breath weapon on a single target if they looked kind of sickly and thus had a lower constitution, but I would always use it if I could get two people into that cone. It's important to keep in mind that the white dragon's breath weapon targets constitution and not dexterity. This means abilities like evasion that allow you to nope out of a breath weapon's damage do not apply. For the young dragon, basically all of our numbers just go up a little bit, but there's no actual significant changes. However, with a third attack added to their improved rend damage, using your cold breath on a single target becomes even less likely to pan out well. But with a 30-foot cone instead of a 15, it should be significantly easier to get at least 2 targets in the cone, at which point you should breathe every time you can. Interestingly, that reluctance to breathe on a single target does not carry over into adult white dragons. With an average of 51 melee damage out of those 3 attacks, or 54 damage with its cold breath, it's a bit of a toss-up for the adult dragon as to which one is going to do the most damage. But again, it's now a 60-foot cone, which should mean that it's a no-brainer to get 2 people in your breath weapon, and numerically, that's gonna really hurt. Breathe every time it's available. You might even consider just moving out of reach between recharges, though your players will hate that. The increase in numbers for ancients doesn't fare quite as well as it does for the adults, so make sure that you're getting 2 targets in your breath every time it goes off. But again, 90-foot cone now should be an easy thing to do. Also, remember that white dragons are immune to their own breath weapons. Sadly, adult and ancient white dragons do not gain the ability to cast spells like other dragons. Sort of. Because while they don't get traditional spell casting or an additional spell being cast as part of their multi-attack like other dragons, they do learn how to use the Freezing Burst and Frightful Presence legendary actions, which makes them masters of movement control. But they also get the Pounce ability. This legendary action allows them to move up to half their speed and make a rend attack. It does not enable them to avoid opportunity attacks, but that doesn't mean that you can't use it to move away from opponents who are trying to close ground with you. In fact, you should totally do that. If you can pounce several times in a round, and by doing so, force people to only have hit you with an opportunity attack but not get to make a full attack routine with extra attack, then you have won that round's action economy as the dragon. I have a video all about that. Go check it out. Meanwhile, Frightful Presence is a way to get opportunity attacks of your own, as well as to keep people away from you who you don't really want near you. Melee combatants are the obvious targets for a white dragon's fear spell as a legendary action, though any weapon user will still suffer mightily for dropping their weapon and spending their action economy running away. Freezing Burst, on the other hand, is interesting. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but like the dragon's breath weapon, it targets Constitution. This means everyone will probably have an okay save, but only few will be absolute experts at avoiding it. It also reduces speed to 0 and can explode anywhere, even in the air. This means it can bring flyers dropping out of the sky to add sweet, sweet gravity damage. Gravity damage is my favorite. Combined with Frightful Presence, Freezing Burst allows the dragon to isolate their prey, which is totally their modus operandi. Hit everyone with the breath weapon. Pounce into position for a good Frightful Presence and scare people into running. Then freeze everyone else before deciding who you're going to leap on top of and rip apart while everyone else stands by watching or flees in terror. Unless, of course, your breath weapon is back, and then hit them all with that again. When it comes to allies, white dragons are forward-thinking enough to keep minions that are going to make it easier for them to survive. Preferably by having them serve them lunch. Like many chromatics, they don't engender loyal servants, but more likely terrified ones, which might give your adventurers an opening. Any humanoid or bipedal creature could fall into this category, particularly if they're a creature that has adapted to the cold environment. Adding cold resistance to relatively common monsters like trolls, ogres, or kobolds is a classic of white dragon world building. In terms of synergy, I would say that Yeti make a terrifying addition to a white dragon's minions, with their chilling gaze potentially being able to paralyze the dragon's targets, allowing automatic critical hits, and their immunity to cold damage making the indiscriminate breath weaponing no problem at all for anybody on the field. They're dangerous additions, and an ancient white dragon might even be able to keep an abominable Yeti or two in line. Likewise, a pack of winter wolves might bend the knee to a superior hunter and also aid that dragon significantly in combat. Their ability to pull targets prone mean that they can set the dragon up for nice, accurate rend attacks to tear one target apart at a time. And again, they're immune to cold, and they can even breathe cold, so they and the dragon can breathe back and forth on each other in the heaviest breathing session that you've ever had at your D&D game since the bard was successful at seducing the other dragon. White dragons are also often found accompanying frost giants, but usually in chains. Make sure that you don't portray that kind of dragon as loyal, though. They should almost always be ready to eat their master's leg the moment it becomes a possibility for them to get away with it. Time for another end of video survey. I'm already making guides for the other chromatic dragons, but I'd love to know if you would like a guide like this for different creature types, and if so, what? Let me know while you enjoy these videos of my cats. And if you're sick of your combats just not being deadly enough to scare your players and get that tension that you are hoping for, then check out this video. It's the one.